The boardroom door opens. Naomi enters with 3 small hands holding onto her leg. Edward just freezes. But before we dive into the full story, let me know where you're watching from and what time it is. Now, subscribe to the channel and let's get started. New York City, December 2008. Snow fell in thick, silent flakes outside the windows of the Plaza Hotel, transforming Manhattan into a winter wonderland. Inside one of the hotel's luxury suites, Naomi Gutierrez carefully arranged a bouquet of white roses on the elegantly set table, her hands trembling slightly with anticipation. The pregnancy test, its 2 pink lines still sending waves of disbelief through her, lay nestled in a small velvet box beside a bottle of expensive champagne. For Edward, not for her. She had rehearsed the moment a dozen times in her mind. His smile, his shocked joy, the way his blue eyes would light up when she told him they were going to be parents. At 27, Naomi had already defied all expectations. The daughter of Dominican immigrants from the Bronx, she had earned a full scholarship to NYU's finance program, graduating with honors before landing an analyst position at the prestigious Lang Investments. Her exceptional talent with algorithms and predictive models had caught the attention of Edward Lang himself, the 32-year-old heir to the company. Just a few more touches, she whispered to herself, adjusting the silverware with precision. Through the window she watched the snow intensifying, blanketing Central Park in pristine white. It felt like a good omen, pure, perfect, the beginning of something beautiful. Naomi glanced at her reflection in the mirror, smoothing down her simple black dress. She'd styled her dark curls the way Edward preferred, straightened, elegant. The diamond ring on her finger caught the light, sending prisms dancing across the wallpaper. Sometimes she still couldn't believe it was real. Their wedding at the Plaza 6 months ago had been the social event of the season. She remembered Edward's proud smile as they exchanged vows, though she also recalled the tight smiles of his parents, their eyes communicating disapproval even as they posed for photographs. Marrying beneath him, she'd overheard Edward's mother whisper to a friend at the reception, "This Dominican girl, what does he see in her besides exotic novelty?" Naomi shook away the memory, focusing instead on their honeymoon in Bora Bora. Perfect turquoise waters, champagne at sunset, their happiness captured in Instagram photos that had made her childhood friends from the Bronx gasp with envy. If there had been moments when Edward seemed distant, when he'd criticized her middle-class habits, or winced at her occasional accent slips when she was tired, well, those were just adjustments in any marriage, weren't they? She opened her laptop while waiting, her finance mind automatically checking market fluctuations. Numbers had always made sense to her, reliable, predictable, unlike people. She'd developed an algorithm last month that had saved Lang Investments millions, though Edward had presented it to the board as a collaborative effort. "They wouldn't understand it coming from you," he'd explained. The hours passed. 7 o'clock, 8, 9. Naomi's carefully prepared dinner grew cold. She texted Edward, keeping her tone light. "Everything okay?" "Dinner's waiting." His response came an hour later. "Meeting with Dad ran long. Having drinks now. Don't wait up." She decided to wait anyway. This news couldn't keep another day. At 10:30 she reheated the food. At 11 she heard the electronic lock of the suite click open. Edward Lang stumbled in, his expensive coat dusted with snow, his cheeks flushed with alcohol. His blue eyes, usually sharp and calculating, were slightly unfocused as he loosened his Hermes tie. "You're still up," he said, not a question, but an accusation. "I made dinner," Naomi said, gesturing to the table. "I wanted us to celebrate." Edward glanced at the setup with undisguised disdain. "Celebrate with hotel food? I just had a 5-course meal at Le Bernardin." "I made it myself," Naomi said quietly. "The hotel let me use the kitchen." "How quaint." He pronounced the word like something distasteful. "Another of your Bronx habits. My mother was right. You can take the girl out of the neighborhood, but..." He left the rest hanging in the air between them. Something in his tone sent ice through Naomi's veins. This wasn't just Edward being tired or drunk. There was a coldness she'd never heard before. "What happened at the meeting with your father?" she asked. Edward threw himself into an armchair, not bothering to remove his coat. "What happened is that I finally listened to reason. My family has been trying to tell me something I refused to hear." "Edward, what are you talking about?" "This," he gestured between them, "was a mistake, a phase. Rebellion against my parents, perhaps. But it's time to end the charade." Naomi felt the room tilt. "Charade? Our marriage is a charade? Marriage?" He laughed, the sound brittle. "Let's call it what it was. An impulsive mistake. The board is questioning my judgment because of it. My family's social circle thinks I've lost my mind. Because you married me." The words fell like stones. "My family is right." Edward's voice hardened. "Marrying you was the biggest mistake of my life. You're a fraud, Naomi. A girl from the Bronx trying to pass as someone who belongs in our world. It's pathetic." Naomi couldn't breathe. 6 months of marriage, 3 years of relationship, all unraveling in seconds. "Edward, please, whatever your father said, he opened my eyes." Edward stood suddenly, swaying slightly. "Do you know what they call you at the club? Lang's exotic experiment? Do you know how that reflects on me, on the company?" "I've brought value to the company," Naomi countered, fighting to keep her voice steady. "My algorithms." "Your algorithms?" Edward sneered. "No one believes they're really yours. They think I'm covering for you, giving you credit to justify this mistake." "That's not true," she whispered, feeling her world crumbling. Without warning, Edward strode to the closet and yanked out her suitcases, throwing them onto the bed. "Pack your things. Tonight." "What?" "Edward, stop. We need to talk about this." Naomi moved toward him, reaching for his arm. "I have something important to tell you." He shrugged her off. "There's nothing you can say that will change my mind. This is happening." "Please, just listen." "I've already spoken to my lawyer," Edward interrupted, pulling clothes from hangers and tossing them haphazardly into the suitcases. "The papers for annulment will be ready tomorrow." "Annulment?" Naomi felt dizzy. "Not divorce?" "I don't want a divorce. I want this erased completely." His eyes were cold, unfamiliar, as if it never happened. Naomi stood frozen as Edward continued emptying her side of the closet. The small box with the pregnancy test seemed to burn in her peripheral vision. "Edward, please, You're what? Going to beg? Threaten me? It won't work." He zipped one suitcase closed with violent finality. "The Lang family takes care of mistakes, Naomi. Quickly and thoroughly." When the suitcases were packed, Edward dragged them to the door and pushed them into the hallway. "A car will take you wherever you need to go. The hotel is paid through tomorrow. That should be sufficient time to figure out your next steps." "Edward!" Naomi tried one last time, tears streaming down her face. "Goodbye, Naomi." His voice was empty of all emotion. "My lawyer will contact you." The door closed with a soft, expensive click, leaving Naomi standing alone in the suite that had been their temporary home. The table was still set for two, candles burning low, the small gift box containing their future untouched beside Edward's plate. She moved robotically to the window, watching the snow transform the city into something unrecognizable. Her hand drifted to her still flat stomach, the first wave of morning sickness rising as if on cue. The next morning, alone and devastated in a cheap Queen's motel room she'd found after midnight, Naomi watched on a small television as the Lang family's private jet took off for London. The business news anchor explained that Edward Lang would be managing the family's European interests for an indefinite period. 2 days later, a courier delivered an envelope containing annulment papers, a check for $250,000, and a coldly typed note: "To terminate any future obligation, Do not attempt contact. Naomi stared at the papers through tears, the morning sickness so intense she could barely stand. As Manhattan's skyline glittered indifferently through her grimy window, she couldn't possibly imagine that 15 years later she would be viewing those same lights from the top of her own corporate tower, with a financial empire larger than the Langs had ever built. The cold clarity of Manhattan's skyline taunted Naomi through the grimy window of her Queens motel room. The check for $250,000, Edward's blood money, lay on the scratched nightstand beside the annulment papers. In any other circumstance, this sum might have seemed life-changing. Now it felt like a cruel joke, a pittance for erasing her existence from his life. Naomi's trembling fingers reached for her phone, scrolling to Edward's contact information. Her thumb hovered over the call button before she remembered his parting note. Do not attempt contact. She tried his office number instead, reaching his executive assistant. Lang Investments, Mr. Lang's office, the crisp voice answered. This is Naomi Gutierrez, she began, her voice breaking. Mrs. Lang? The assistant's tone immediately cooled. I've been instructed regarding your calls. Please, Naomi whispered. I just need 5 minutes with him. It's urgent. Mr. Lang left explicit instructions. Any contact attempts will result in legal action for harassment, the assistant recited mechanically. I'm required to inform you that this call is being logged. The line went dead. Naomi sat on the edge of the bed, phone still pressed to her ear, as if holding on to the disconnected call might somehow maintain a link to the life that had been ripped away from her. 3 weeks later, Naomi sat in another sterile waiting room, this time at a job interview for a financial analyst position at Merrill Lynch. Her resume was impeccable. New York University finance degree with honors, 3 years at Lang Investments. But the interviewer's expression changed the moment he saw her name. Gutierrez, weren't you recently at Lang Investments? He asked, his brow furrowing. Yes, until 3 weeks ago, Naomi replied, maintaining her composure. I see. His eyes didn't meet hers. There seemed to be some concerns about your departure. Naomi's stomach tightened. Concerns? Nothing specific, he said too quickly. We'll be in touch. They never called. Neither did Goldman Sachs, J.P. Morgan, or any of the other 12 financial institutions where she interviewed over the following 2 weeks. The pattern became sickeningly familiar. Initial interest in her qualifications, followed by an uncomfortable shift when her previous employer was discussed, concluding with empty promises to be in touch. By the 6th week after Edward's abandonment, Naomi couldn't ignore the whispers anymore. A former colleague from Lang Investments, Priya, met her for coffee, nervously glancing around as if afraid of being seen. They're saying you leaked confidential information, Priya whispered. Others claim you fabricated your algorithm results. Someone even suggested you were having an affair with Richardson in acquisitions. None of that is true, Naomi said, her voice hollow with disbelief. I know, Priya squeezed her hand, but the Langs control half of Wall Street's relationships when they blacklist someone. The next morning, Naomi received a letter informing her that her health insurance, linked to her Lang Investments employment, had been terminated. That same afternoon, she sat in a public clinic waiting room surrounded by screaming children and exhausted mothers to confirm what her body had already told her. She was pregnant. Let's take a look, the harried doctor said, squirting cold gel onto Naomi's abdomen. The ultrasound machine flickered to life, and the doctor's eyes widened. Oh, is something wrong? Naomi asked, panic rising. Not wrong exactly, but I'm detecting 3 distinct heartbeats. You're carrying triplets. The world seemed to drop away beneath her. Triplets? Naomi whispered, the word alien on her tongue. Yes, all appear healthy, though multiple pregnancies always carry additional risks. You'll need specialized prenatal care, regular monitoring, proper nutrition. The doctor continued, but Naomi had stopped hearing. 3 babies, 3 helpless, innocent lives dependent entirely on her. Unemployed, blacklisted, abandoned. The tiny Queen's apartment she'd managed to rent with some of Edward's money suddenly seemed impossibly small. The remaining funds, which might have sustained one person for a year, would evaporate in months with medical bills for a high-risk pregnancy. That night, Naomi sat on her bathroom floor, retching miserably as morning sickness struck with evening precision. Between waves of nausea, she made one last desperate attempt, calling Edward's secretary again. "It's about his children," Naomi said before the woman could hang up. "I'm pregnant with triplets. He has the right to know." A long pause followed. "I'll pass along the message," the secretary finally said, her voice slightly softer. Hope flickered briefly, extinguished the next morning by a formal letter from Lang's attorneys. "Any further contact attempts will be considered harassment and met with immediate legal action. The settlement amount previously provided constitutes complete fulfillment of any obligation." They hadn't even bothered to address the pregnancy. With $200 left in her account and rent due in a week, Naomi took the first job she could find, waitressing at a diner 10 blocks from her apartment. The owner, an older Greek man named Stavros, didn't ask questions when she requested shifts that ended before she became too visibly pregnant. "Tips are better during lunch anyway," he shrugged. "Just don't drop the plates." By her 4th month, her growing belly made waitressing increasingly difficult. Naomi added evening shifts at a 24-hour pharmacy, ringing up medications and convenience items while studying customer faces, wondering which might be taking home remedies for ailments her own insurance would no longer cover. When even 2 jobs proved insufficient, especially with the mounting costs of prenatal vitamins and doctor visits, she added weekend work cleaning offices in Manhattan's financial district. The irony wasn't lost on her. Scrubbing toilets in buildings where she had once attended meetings, polishing desks similar to the one where she had once developed million-dollar algorithms. One Saturday night, exhausted after hours of cleaning, Naomi entered a small office belonging to a tech startup. A computer had been left on, its screen displaying a complex financial spreadsheet. She should have moved on. Touching client computers was strictly against company policy, but something in the numbers caught her eye. An error in the algorithm, a fundamental flaw that would cost the company millions if implemented. Without thinking, Naomi sat down, her fingers flying over the keyboard as she corrected the formula, restructured the model, added fail-safes. It felt like breathing after weeks underwater, using her mind instead of just her body. For 20 minutes, she lost herself in the familiar comfort of numbers and logic before finally forcing herself to stop. She cleared the screen history, wiped her fingerprints from the keyboard, and continued her cleaning rounds. The following Monday, she arrived at the diner to find Stavros waving a newspaper. "You see this?" He pointed to a small article. "Tech company downtown going crazy looking for mystery genius who fixed their trading algorithm, saved them millions." Naomi froze, coffee pot in hand. The article mentioned the office building she cleaned, the specific startup. "Probably just a good hacker," she murmured, turning away to hide her expression. 3 days later, as she mopped floors in the same building, a young Indian man in rumpled clothes approached her, studying her face intently. "You're the one, aren't you?" he asked without preamble. "Security footage shows you were the only person in that office Saturday night." Naomi's heart sank. "I'm sorry. I know I shouldn't have touched the computer. I just saw the error and—" "Error?" The man laughed incredulously. "You completely revolutionized our trading model. I'm Raj Patel, founder of Algoritech. Who are you and why are you cleaning floors instead of running a hedge fund?" Before she could formulate a response, a wave of dizziness swept over her. Raj's eyes widened as he noticed her pregnant belly beneath the loose cleaning uniform. "Are you all right?" he asked, guiding her to a chair. "Just tired," Naomi managed. "And yes, I fixed your algorithm. There was a recursion problem in your risk assessment model." "Who are you?" Raj repeated, fascination replacing his concern. Naomi Gutierrez, former analyst at Lang Investments, currently unemployable in finance. Recognition dawned in his eyes. I've heard rumors, but clearly they can't be true if you can code like that. The night before the triplets were due, though the doctor warned they would likely arrive early, Naomi stood at her apartment window, looking out at Queen's modest skyline. 3 bassinets crowded her bedroom, each containing identical yellow blankets purchased from a thrift shop. Her throat tightened at their inadequacy. She placed both hands on her enormous belly, feeling the rhythmic movements of the 3 lives within. Despite everything, the exhaustion of 3 jobs, the humiliation of Edward's rejection, the anxiety of impending motherhood, a fierce determination had crystallized within her. "Your last names will be Carter, my maiden name," she whispered to the babies kicking inside her. "We'll never need a Lang for anything. One day, we'll see this city from above, not below. And when he sees us again, he'll understand exactly what he lost." While scrubbing the floor of an empty corporate office in Manhattan, Naomi couldn't possibly foresee that in 15 years, she would be the one occupying the penthouse of that very building, signing contracts that would forever change the financial world that had rejected her. While scrubbing the floor of an empty corporate office in Manhattan, Naomi winced as a sharp pain shot through her lower back. 6 months pregnant with triplets, her body had expanded well beyond what seemed physically possible, making every movement a challenge. She paused, resting on her knees, one hand supporting her aching spine while the other protectively cradled her swollen belly. The midnight silence of the vacant office building felt almost peaceful compared to her cramped apartment in Queens. Here, surrounded by gleaming desks and expensive computers, she could momentarily pretend she still belonged in this world of finance and power. She glanced at her watch, 2 hours left in her cleaning shift. The weekend maintenance job paid less than both her waitressing and pharmacy positions, but she couldn't afford to give up any source of income, not with 3 babies on the way and medical bills mounting. As she resumed scrubbing, a light from one of the cubicles caught her attention. Someone had left a computer on, its screen illuminating the otherwise dim space. Company policy strictly prohibited cleaning staff from touching clients' equipment, but Naomi found herself drawn to the glow like a moth to flame. Setting aside her mop, she waddled toward the workstation, curiosity overcoming caution. The monitor displayed a complex spreadsheet filled with financial formulas, a trading algorithm she realized immediately. Her trained eyes scanned the numbers, and within seconds, she spotted a critical error in the risk assessment matrix. "That can't be right," she whispered, leaning closer. "If they implement this, they'll lose millions on currency fluctuations." She hesitated, fingers hovering above the keyboard. Touching the computer meant risking her job, the 3rd job she couldn't afford to lose. But the mathematician in her couldn't bear to leave such a glaring mistake uncorrected. "Just a quick fix," she justified, carefully lowering herself into the ergonomic chair. Her fingers flew across the keyboard with practiced precision, the familiar dance of numbers and formulas momentarily transforming her from an exhausted pregnant cleaning woman back into the brilliant financial analyst she truly was. She corrected the primary error, then continued working, identifying additional inefficiencies, strengthening fail-safes, and restructuring the algorithm to account for market volatilities. For 45 minutes, Naomi lost herself in the work, forgetting her aching back, swollen ankles, and precarious financial situation. Only when one of the triplets delivered a particularly forceful kick did she snap back to reality. "Oh God, what am I doing?" she gasped, quickly saving the changes and erasing evidence of her presence from the system's history. She wiped her fingerprints from the keyboard and mouse, then returned to her cleaning cart, heart pounding with anxiety over her impulsive action. The next morning, bleary-eyed from another night of pregnancy-induced insomnia, Naomi dragged herself to her waitressing shift at Dimitri's diner. She had just finished serving a table of businessmen when her supervisor called her to the back. "Someone's asking for you," he said, expression puzzled. "Some Indian guy in an expensive suit. Says it's important. Naomi's blood ran cold. Had someone discovered her unauthorized computer access? Was she about to lose yet another job? At a corner booth sat a man in his early 30s with rumpled hair and intelligent eyes behind stylish glasses. Despite his expensive suit, he had the disheveled look of someone who hadn't slept in days. "Are you Naomi Gutierrez?" he asked, standing as she approached. "Yes," she admitted cautiously. "How can I help you?" "I'm Raj Patel, founder of Quantum Financial Technologies. Someone fixed our primary trading algorithm last night." His eyes narrowed. "Security footage shows the only person in our office was a pregnant cleaning woman." Naomi's throat went dry. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have—" "Sorry?" Raj laughed incredulously. "You saved us from a catastrophic error that would have cost us millions. How did you even understand our proprietary system, let alone improve it so dramatically?" Before she could answer, Naomi felt a wave of dizziness wash over her. Raj quickly guided her to sit, genuine concern replacing his excitement. "Are you all right? Should I call someone?" "I'm fine," she managed, though the room still spun slightly. "Just haven't eaten today. 3 babies demand a lot of nutrition I can't always provide." Raj signaled a waiter, ordering food without consulting the menu. Everything she wants, plus a glass of milk and orange juice. When their privacy returned, Raj leaned forward. "You didn't answer my question. How does a cleaning lady understand complex algorithmic trading strategies?" Naomi met his gaze directly. "Because I'm not really a cleaning lady. I have a finance degree from New York University and was a senior analyst at Lang Investments until 3 months ago." Recognition flickered in Raj's eyes. "Lang, wait, weren't you the one who allegedly leaked trading secrets? Who supposedly fabricated performance results? Who apparently slept with executives for advancement?" Her bitter laugh held no humor. "None of it true, but all of it believed because the Lang family decided I needed to disappear." The food arrived, and Naomi attacked it with embarrassing hunger. Raj waited patiently, studying her with increasing fascination. "I checked the modifications you made to our algorithm," he said when she finally slowed down. "It wasn't just fixing an error. You completely restructured our approach, added volatility safeguards I've never seen before. That's genius-level work." Naomi shrugged. "Numbers have always made sense to me. People, not so much." "What happened at Lang? The real story?" She hesitated, then gave him the abbreviated version. The whirlwind romance with Edward, their marriage, his abrupt abandonment, the subsequent blacklisting, discovering her pregnancy with triplets. "So now I clean offices, wait tables, and work pharmacy nights," she concluded. "No financial firm in New York will touch me, no matter my qualifications." Raj sat back, clearly processing the information. "This is insane. Someone with your talent scrubbing floors while carrying triplets?" "The world isn't fair," Naomi said simply. "I've accepted that." "Well, I haven't," Raj replied, sliding a business card across the table. "I want you to work for me, as a developer, not a cleaner." Naomi stared at the card in disbelief. "You can't be serious." "Completely serious. My startup needs exactly your kind of talent." "I'm 6 months pregnant with triplets," she reminded him. "I'll need to take maternity leave almost immediately." Raj waved this away. "We'll figure it out. Work from home, flexible hours. I don't care as long as your brain is solving our problems." "Why would you take such a risk on me?" "Because I recognize talent when I see it," he answered. "Also, my mother had twins while running a restaurant in Mumbai. She'd haunt me from beyond if I rejected someone based on pregnancy." Naomi felt tears threatening, the first hopeful ones in months. "What position?" "Junior developer to start. The salary's not Lang Investments level, but it's legitimate work in your field, plus stock options that could be valuable if we succeed." "When do you need an answer?" "Now would be good," Raj grinned. "I have an algorithm that needs finishing by someone who understands what they're doing." 3 days later, Naomi entered Quantum Financial's modest office as an employee rather than a cleaner. The space occupied half a floor in a mediocre midtown building, nothing like the gleaming towers of established firms, but to Naomi, it represented salvation. Raj introduced her to his small team, 2 other developers, a sales manager, and an operations assistant. Their curious glances at her pregnant belly were quickly replaced by respectful attention when Raj described her finance background. "Naomi will be streamlining our predictive models," he explained. Her work on risk assessment algorithms at Lang Investments was groundbreaking. By lunchtime, Naomi had identified 3 critical weaknesses in their trading platform. By end of day, she'd implemented solutions for 2 of them. For the first time in months, she felt useful, valued for her mind rather than her physical labor. On her way home, she stopped at a small park bench to rest her swollen feet. The December chill bit through her coat, but she needed a moment to process the dramatic turn her life had taken in just a few days. Her hands caressed her rounded belly, feeling the movements of the 3 lives within. "We might be okay after all," she whispered to them. "Someone finally saw past circumstances to who I really am." A soft flutter answered from within, one of the babies stretching or turning. Naomi smiled, genuine hope warming her despite the cold. That evening, she called the pharmacy and diner to give notice. Both managers expressed genuine regret at losing her, which touched Naomi more than she expected. She kept the weekend cleaning job temporarily, needing every dollar until her first developer paycheck cleared. As she prepared for bed in her tiny apartment, Naomi allowed herself to imagine a different future than the one of perpetual struggle she'd resigned herself to. Perhaps these babies wouldn't grow up in poverty after all. Perhaps she could still build something meaningful from the ashes of her previous life. At that moment, her phone chimed with a text from Raj. "Had another look at your algorithm improvements. Phenomenal work. Welcome aboard." Naomi smiled through tears, resting her hand protectively over her belly. For the first time since Edward's betrayal, she felt a flicker of her old confidence returning. As she accepted the pen to sign the contract with Raj's small startup, Naomi had no idea she was taking the first step toward building a technological empire that, in 15 years, would become the terror of financial giants, including Lang Investments. The pen felt heavy in Naomi's hand as she signed the contract with Raj's startup, a strange mix of hope and terror swirling inside her. Working at Quantum Financial Technologies meant a chance to use her mind again, but nothing could eliminate the looming reality of 3 babies about to enter her precarious world. 2 weeks later, as Naomi analyzed market fluctuations on her laptop at home, a sharp pain ripped through her abdomen. She gasped, clutching the edge of her small kitchen table. Another contraction followed, more intense than the first. At only 32 weeks pregnant, this was happening too soon. "Not yet," she whispered to her swollen belly. "They're not ready." Her trembling hands dialed an ambulance as fluid trickled down her legs. Within minutes, paramedics rushed Naomi down the narrow stairwell of her Queens apartment building. No one held her hand in the screaming ambulance. No anxious father-to-be followed behind in a luxury car. Just Naomi, alone with her fear and the 3 tiny lives dependent solely on her. "Premature triplets," the ER doctor announced after examining her. "We need to deliver now." The delivery room became a blur of urgent medical commands. Monitors beeped frantically as Naomi's blood pressure dropped dangerously low. "Stay with us," a nurse urged, squeezing Naomi's hand. "Your babies need you." Through a haze of pain and medication, Naomi heard 3 distinct cries, each one miraculous and terrifying. The babies were whisked away before she could even see them properly, tiny creatures born 7 weeks too early, each weighing less than 4 pounds. "Will they survive?" she asked the pediatrician hours later, her voice hoarse from screaming during delivery. "They're fighters," the doctor replied cautiously. "The next 48 hours are critical." When Naomi finally saw her children in the NICU, she nearly collapsed. 3 impossibly small bodies lay in separate incubators, entangled in tubes and wires, their translucent skin revealing blue veins beneath. Their little chests heaved with each assisted breath. "Meet your sons and daughter," the nurse said gently. "2 boys and a girl." Naomi pressed her palm against the first incubator. "Elijah," she whispered to the baby boy with a dusting of dark hair. Moving to the second, "Maya," for her daughter whose tiny fists were clenched as if ready to fight the world. And finally, "Zoe," for the smallest triplet, whose blue eyes, so like Edward's, briefly fluttered open. "Carter," she added firmly. "Elijah, Maya, and Zoe Carter." For the next 3 weeks, Naomi practically lived in the hospital. She established a makeshift workspace in the corner of the NICU, her laptop balanced precariously on her knees as she worked remotely for Raj between feeding times and medical consultations. "You should be resting," a night nurse chided, finding Naomi coding at 3 in the morning beside the incubators. "I'm fine," Naomi insisted, dark circles beneath her eyes betraying her exhaustion. "I can't afford to fall behind." The truth was more complex. Working kept her sane, providing an escape from the terrifying reality of her children's fragile condition. Each line of code represented future security. Each completed project meant another paycheck to cover mounting medical bills. Raj visited the hospital one afternoon, bringing 3 tiny stuffed animals, an elephant, a giraffe, and a lion, placing them carefully beside each incubator. "Their first computers will be much better," he promised with a gentle smile. "How are you holding up?" Naomi gestured to her chaotic workstation. "Meeting all the deadlines." "That's not what I asked." She blinked back unexpected tears. "I'm terrified. They're so small, Raj. What if they don't make it? What if I can't do this alone?" Raj squeezed her shoulder. "One day at a time, and you're not completely alone. You have us now." By some miracle, all 3 babies stabilized and began gaining weight. At 6 weeks old, nearly 3 pounds heavier each, they were finally cleared to go home. The discharge process revealed a new challenge: how to physically manage 3 newborns simultaneously. "You need to support the head and neck like this," a patient nurse demonstrated, showing Naomi how to hold 2 babies at once. The third technique, balancing one in the crook of her arm while cradling 2 others, seemed physically impossible until Naomi mastered it through sheer determination. The taxi ride home became an adventure in logistics. The driver eyed the 3 infant carriers nervously. "You got somebody waiting to help you at home?" he asked, glancing in the rearview mirror. "Just me," Naomi replied, her voice steady despite her racing heart. That first night alone with the triplets was the most challenging of Naomi's life, worse than Edward's abandonment, worse than losing her career. All 3 babies seemed to operate on entirely different schedules, creating a chaotic symphony of cries that allowed her no more than 20-minute stretches of sleep. By dawn, Naomi sat cross-legged on the floor surrounded by 3 squirming infants, tears streaming down her face. "I can't do this," she whispered. Then Maya grabbed her finger with surprising strength, and Naomi took a deep breath. "Yes, I can. We'll figure this out together." Over the following weeks, Naomi developed an intricate system to manage both babies and work. She arranged their cribs in a semicircle around her desk, keeping them within reach while she coded. One monitor displayed algorithmic models, another showed a rotation of baby-soothing videos. When one baby needed attention, she'd type one-handed while holding them. During conference calls, she kept pacifiers ready and the mute button accessible for sudden crying episodes. Raj arranged for her to work almost entirely from home, scheduling team meetings around feeding times. On rare occasions when she needed to visit the office, she'd arrive with 3 baby carriers, setting them up beside her workstation while colleagues cooed over the infants. 1 month into this precarious balance, an unexpected knock at the door revealed a stern-faced woman with a clipboard. "Ms. Carter, I'm Sandra Wilson from Child Protective Services. We received an anonymous report about potentially unsuitable living conditions for infants." Naomi's heart stopped. Anonymous report? Her mind immediately flashed to the Langs. Had they discovered the babies and decided to interfere? "Please come in," she said, maintaining composure while panic churned inside. The social worker conducted a thorough inspection, eyeing the cramped apartment critically. Naomi followed, explaining each adaptation she'd made: the ingenious feeding station with pre-measured formula, the color-coded system for tracking medications and feedings, the workspace integrated with the nursery area. "You're managing 3 premature infants while working full-time?" the social worker asked, scribbling notes. "Yes," Naomi answered, chin raised. "My children have everything they need: love, medical care, proper nutrition, and a mother who would do anything for them." Sandra's expression softened slightly as she observed Naomi deftly soothing Zoe while helping Elijah with a bottle, all while explaining a respiratory monitoring system she'd rigged from a modified baby monitor. "Your organization is impressive," the social worker admitted before leaving. "I'll note in my report that despite space limitations, the children appear well cared for." As the door closed behind the visitor, Naomi sank to the floor, cradling Zoe close. "No one will take you from me," she whispered fiercely. "No one." Work demands increased as Quantum Financial secured more clients. Naomi joined video conferences with investors, strategically positioning her camera to hide any evidence of babies just outside the frame. During one crucial presentation, her internet connection failed precisely as Maya began wailing. Raj covered masterfully, claiming technical difficulties, while Naomi frantically rebooted her router with one hand while bouncing Maya with the other. When an investor questioned her commitment during a quarterly review, Raj's response was immediate. "Naomi delivers more quality work than 3 programmers combined. Her circumstances don't diminish her value, they demonstrate her exceptional capacity." 6 months in, exhaustion had become Naomi's constant companion. She survived on caffeine and determination, often coding through the night while the babies briefly slept. Her body hadn't recovered from the difficult pregnancy. Her mind was perpetually foggy from sleep deprivation. Yet somehow the algorithms she developed during these blurred hours proved more innovative than any she'd created at Lang Investments. One rare, peaceful evening, with all 3 babies asleep simultaneously, Naomi sat on the floor between their cribs, simply watching them breathe. Each showed distinct personalities already: Elijah, methodical and observant; Maya, passionate and expressive; Zoe, determined and calculating. In their faces, she occasionally caught glimpses of Edward, the shape of Zoe's eyes, Elijah's contemplative expression. But these children were entirely their own people. "You will be extraordinary," she promised them softly. "Not because of where you came from, but because of who you are." While rocking her 3 premature babies in a cramped Queens apartment, Naomi couldn't imagine that in 14 years they would become prodigies known throughout Manhattan, and that the father who abandoned them would watch their success, stunned, through magazine headlines he never thought he'd read. 3 years passed like a whirlwind. What once seemed impossible, raising triplets while rebuilding a career, had become Naomi's daily reality. Her Queens apartment, now slightly larger but still modest, echoed with the chaotic energy of 3-year-old toddlers, each already displaying distinct personalities that both delighted and exhausted her. "Elijah, please don't organize Maya's crayons again," Naomi called out, spotting her methodical son meticulously arranging his sister's art supplies by color spectrum while she wailed in protest. "But they're wrong," Elijah insisted, his serious brown eyes peering through tiny glasses that made him look like a miniature professor. At 3, he already showed an uncanny ability to recognize patterns and sequences that children twice his age struggled with. Across the room, Zoe had somehow convinced her siblings to trade their juice boxes for her water, her persuasive abilities already eerily reminiscent of a Wall Street negotiator. "Maya's is purple, and purple tastes better with cookies," she explained with impeccable 3-year-old logic. Naomi hid her smile as she adjusted her webcam for a client meeting, making sure the frame captured only her professional appearance and not the crayon masterpiece evolving on the wall behind her. After 3 years at Quantum Financial, she had been promoted to senior developer, working remotely most days to accommodate her complex family life. The Morrison portfolio analysis shows promising stability, she explained to the clients on her screen, her voice confident and steady, despite Elijah choosing that exact moment to dump a box of blocks just beyond the camera's view. When the meeting ended, Naomi switched seamlessly from finance professional to mother, helping the triplets clean up before their afternoon nap, a sacred time she reserved for her most intensive coding work. Once they were asleep, she sat cross-legged on her bed, laptop balanced on her knees, diving into the project that had consumed her spare moments for months. The algorithm had come to her during those endless nights of newborn care, pieces falling into place between feedings and diaper changes. While Raj's company focused on straightforward trading platforms, Naomi's vision went deeper, a predictive model that could identify institutional weaknesses before they manifested in market performance. If we can see the cracks forming before the structure fails, she had tried explaining to Raj during a rare in-office visit, we could revolutionize risk assessment. Raj had smiled supportively but seemed skeptical. That's theoretically fascinating but practically impossible, Naomi. No algorithm can predict human behavior with that kind of precision. She hadn't argued, but continued working on her project during these stolen hours while the triplets slept. Tonight, as rain pattered against the window, something finally clicked. At 3 a.m, Naomi stared at her screen, heart racing with the realization that she'd solved the critical formula. This algorithm can predict patterns of financial collapse, she whispered to the sleeping apartment. The implications were staggering, identifying vulnerable institutions weeks before traditional metrics showed trouble. The next morning, bleary-eyed but exhilarated, Naomi arrived at Quantum Financial's office with the triplets in tow. The company had grown modestly under Raj's leadership, now occupying a full floor with 20 employees. A small play area had been established in the corner for Naomi's occasional visits with the children. "Raj, we need to talk," she said urgently, setting up the triplets with activities. "It's finished, and it's more powerful than I imagined." Raj looked up from his desk, noting her intensity. "The side project? You actually completed it?" "Not just completed, it's operational. And Raj, we need to use this now, before it's too late." The urgency in her voice made him sit straighter. "What do you mean, too late?" Naomi opened her laptop, displaying complex matrices of data. "My algorithm is showing critical weaknesses in 3 mid-sized financial institutions. According to this, they'll face insolvency within 45 days. Raj frowned. "That's impossible, Naomi. Hargrove Bank was just rated rock solid by the Federal Reserve last month. First Capital Trust has been posting record profits." "The numbers don't lie," she insisted. "Their foundational structures are compromised in ways traditional metrics don't capture. We need to present this to potential clients immediately." After hours of debate, Raj finally agreed to arrange a demonstration for select investors. 1 week later, Naomi found herself in Quantum's conference room, presenting her algorithm to skeptical executives. "Based on our predictive model," she explained, pointing to the projected data, "these 3 institutions show clear indicators of imminent failure despite their current favorable ratings." A gray-haired man in an expensive suit laughed dismissively. "Impossible. The central bank just classified these institutions as solid. What makes your model more accurate than federal regulators?" "Our algorithm integrates 17 additional data layers that current regulatory models ignore," Naomi replied evenly, "including micro-pattern behavior in subsidiary transactions and executive compensation structures." The investors left unconvinced, some openly snickering at the audacity of her claims. Raj looked disappointed but squeezed her shoulder supportively. It was worth trying. Exactly 23 days later, the first of the 3 institutions announced unexpected liquidity issues. Within the week, the second filed for emergency restructuring. By the end of the month, all 3 faced exactly the failures Naomi's algorithm had predicted. Suddenly, Raj's phone wouldn't stop ringing. Investment firms, banks, and hedge funds all wanted access to the technology that had foreseen what industry leaders had missed. Overnight, Quantum Financial transformed from a modest startup to the financial industry's most sought-after analytics provider. "This changes everything," Raj said, stunned as another investment group offered millions for licensing rights. "Naomi, you deserve partnership for what you've created. I'm offering you 30% ownership." Naomi stood by the window of Quantum's office, watching Manhattan's skyline glitter in the distance. The offer was generous, life-changing even, yet something deeper stirred within her, a vision beyond partnership. "I want more than partnership, Raj," she said quietly. "I want to buy your share." Raj stared at her, bewildered. "Buy me out?" "Naomi, that would cost." "I know what it would cost," she interrupted, "and I know how to get it." The following week found Naomi in the imposing offices of Meridian Bank, facing their board of directors. "My algorithm is worth significantly more than the loan I'm requesting," she explained confidently. "The patent alone would secure 10 times this amount." The bank officers exchanged glances, impressed by both her presentation and the proven accuracy of her technology. By the end of the meeting, Naomi had secured financing to purchase Raj's controlling interest in the company. "You're going to transform this into something huge, aren't you?" Raj asked as he signed the transfer documents in a lawyer's office downtown. Naomi smiled. "I'm going to build something that will change how the entire financial world operates." 1 month later, Naomi stood in the new, modest offices of Horizon Analytics. The space wasn't impressive, just 5 rooms in a commercial building in Lower Manhattan, but it was hers. The triplets played contentedly in the corner she'd outfitted as a miniature daycare, complete with educational toys and comfortable nap mats. Carefully, with hands that had once trembled while signing Edward's annulment papers, Naomi hung the brushed aluminum sign bearing her new company's name on the reception wall. "What's that say, Mama?" Maya asked, pointing at the sign. "Horizon Analytics," Naomi answered, lifting her daughter. "It's our company." "Ours?" Elijah asked, looking up from his blocks. "Yes, all of ours. Everything I build is for you 3. Zoe, practical as always, frowned thoughtfully. "Will it buy us a bigger house?" Naomi laughed, gathering all 3 children in her arms. "Someday it will buy us whatever we want, but more importantly, it will show the world what we can accomplish together." That night, after tucking the triplets into bed, Naomi sat at her kitchen table with a glass of inexpensive wine, officially registering Horizon Analytics as a corporation. Outside, Manhattan's lights twinkled, the same skyline that had taunted her during those darkest days after Edward's abandonment. "Look at us now," she whispered to the sleeping apartment. That night, as she registered Horizon Analytics, Naomi didn't know she was founding the company that, a decade later, would be valued in billions and would make Edward Lang choke on his breakfast coffee when reading about her on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. That night, as she registered Horizon Analytics, Naomi didn't know she was founding the company that, a decade later, would be valued in billions. She simply knew it was a first step toward the security her children deserved. 4 years passed. Horizon Analytics grew from Naomi's passionate vision into a respected boutique firm with a growing client list of discerning financial institutions. On a crisp autumn morning, Naomi stood before a conference table of potential investors, her tailored suit a far cry from the threadbare clothes she'd worn in those early desperate days. "Our risk assessment models have consistently outperformed traditional metrics by 37%, she explained, her voice steady and authoritative. "The Morrison portfolio provides a perfect case study of how early identification of structural weaknesses can prevent catastrophic losses." The investors exchanged impressed glances. One, a silver-haired woman who managed a significant pension fund, leaned forward. "Your approach is intriguing, Ms. Carter, but perhaps too ambitious. The established firms have decades of data behind their models." Naomi smiled, recognizing the subtle challenge. With respect, those decades of data created the blind spots that nearly collapsed the market 4 years ago. Horizon doesn't just analyze different data, we analyze it differently. After the meeting, Naomi hurried to her car, checking her watch. The school day ended in 20 minutes, and she'd promised to attend Elijah's presentation at the science demonstration. Her phone buzzed with a message from the Triplets' babysitter. Maya practicing violin. Won't stop. Neighbors complained. Again. At 7 years old, the Triplets had blossomed into remarkable children, each displaying talents that sometimes left Naomi breathless. She pulled up to the elementary school just as children began streaming out. Through the crowd, she spotted Elijah's serious face, his eyes lighting up when he saw her. "Mom, you made it!" He rushed toward her, clutching a folder of papers. "Miss Peterson wants to talk to you." Moments later, Naomi sat across from Elijah's science teacher, whose expression wavered between awe and concern. "Mrs. Carter, Elijah corrected my advanced equation during class today," the teacher explained. "This has never happened before. I hold a master's in applied mathematics, and your 7-year-old found an error in my work." Naomi glanced at Elijah, who seemed unaware of anything unusual. "He's always been good with numbers." "Good? Mrs. Carter, he's solving university-level problems. We're completely unprepared to challenge him appropriately." That evening, after helping Maya prepare for her first violin recital, Naomi received a call from the music instructor. "Your daughter has a remarkable gift," the woman said without preamble. "Her pitch recognition is perfect, and she plays with emotional depth I rarely see in children twice her age." Meanwhile, Zoe had set up an elaborate lemonade stand outside their building, complete with tiered pricing: premium lemonade with fresh mint, $3, standard lemonade, $2, sample size, 50 cents, and homemade marketing flyers distributed throughout the neighborhood. By day's end, she'd earned $67 and secured a distribution deal with the deli on the corner. As Naomi tucked the children into bed that night, the weight of both pride and exhaustion pressed on her shoulders. She'd missed dinner again, arriving home to find the Triplets already bathed and in pajamas, the babysitter looking frazzled but resilient. Sitting on the floor between their beds, Naomi fought back tears. "I'm sorry I was late again," she whispered, though the children were already asleep. The guilt of her frequent absences coexisted uncomfortably with the knowledge that her work was securing their future. Every hour spent building Horizon meant better opportunities, better education, better security for the 3 sleeping children who depended entirely on her. 2 months later, Naomi signed the lease on a larger apartment in Queens. Though still far from luxurious, it offered the precious commodity of space: separate bedrooms for each child, a dedicated home office for her late-night work, and a small living room where they could gather as a family. "This is all ours?" Maya asked, twirling through the empty rooms on moving day. "All ours," Naomi confirmed, watching Elijah methodically planning where each piece of furniture should go, and Zoe immediately claiming the bedroom with the best natural light. The following week, Horizon Analytics moved too, from its cramped initial space to a modest but strategically located office in Manhattan's financial district. The new environment featured glass-walled conference rooms, a small but well-equipped kitchen, and most importantly, enough desks for the growing team Naomi was carefully assembling. Her hiring strategy raised eyebrows among traditional finance firms. While competitors sought fresh Ivy League graduates or seasoned Wall Street veterans, Naomi recruited predominantly women returning to the workforce after having children, mathematicians whose careers had been sidelined by family obligations, brilliant minds overlooked by an industry that prioritized pedigree over performance. "Are you sure about this hire?" her operations manager questioned when Naomi selected a former quantitative analyst who had been out of the workforce for 6 years raising twins. "Her skills might be outdated. She solved our test problem using an approach I've never seen before," Naomi replied. "And she did it while her toddler was having a meltdown on the video call. That's exactly the kind of adaptability and focus we need." The team Naomi built operated differently from traditional financial firms. Flexible hours, remote work options, and a strict family comes first policy created a loyal, motivated workforce that consistently outperformed competitors despite working fewer hours. As spring approached, Elijah's school announced its annual science fair. With characteristic intensity, he decided to create a simplified version of his mother's risk assessment algorithm applied to elementary school lunch preferences. "If I can predict which lunches will be thrown away based on previous patterns," he explained seriously, "the school can reduce food waste by 14%. The night before the science fair coincided with Naomi's critical meeting with International Bank of Commerce, whose potential contract would double Horizon's annual revenue. She sat at her kitchen table at midnight, simultaneously reviewing her presentation and helping Elijah perfect his display board. "Mom, does this graph clearly show the correlation between menu announcements and lunch attendance?" Elijah asked, glasses slipping down his nose as he frowned at his work. "It does," Naomi assured him, while typing last-minute revisions to her own presentation. "The color coding makes the pattern immediately clear." Morning brought impossible logistics. The science fair began at 9, exactly when Naomi's presentation was scheduled downtown. She called the school, negotiating a later judging time for Elijah's project, then arranged for the babysitter to bring all 3 children to the school while she raced to her meeting. The presentation went brilliantly until the bank's CEO asked a question about implementation timelines. Naomi was midway through her answer when her phone vibrated with a message from Elijah. "Judge is here now. Where are you?" Heart pounding, Naomi finished her response, then glanced at her watch. "I believe we've covered the essential points," she said smoothly. "My team will follow up with detailed documentation this afternoon." As the bankers nodded approvingly, Naomi added, "If you'll excuse me, I have another urgent commitment." 20 minutes later, she rushed into the school gymnasium, spotting Elijah standing stoically beside his project while judges scribbled notes. His face brightened when he saw her, and Naomi felt both crushing guilt and overwhelming love. The day delivered a double triumph. As Elijah accepted first prize for his algorithm, Naomi received an email confirming International Bank of Commerce's contract, a multi-million-dollar deal that would transform Horizon's capabilities. That evening, Naomi took the triplets to their favorite diner to celebrate. It wasn't fancy, certainly nothing like the high-end restaurants where Edward had criticized her unsophisticated palate, but the children loved the chocolate milkshakes and the waitress who always remembered their names. "Mom, are you rich now?" Zoe asked bluntly, always the most financially aware of the 3. Naomi smiled. "Horizon is growing stronger every day, but what we're building together is more valuable than any inherited fortune." "Like the fortune our father had?" Elijah asked quietly. The children knew the basic outline of Edward's abandonment, though Naomi had carefully avoided bitterness in her telling. "Exactly," Naomi replied, meeting each child's eyes. "What you earn through your own brilliance and hard work can never be taken away." Maya raised her milkshake glass. "To the Carter family and Horizon!" The triplets clinked their glasses together, chocolate mustaches forming on their upper lips as they giggled. While celebrating her first multi-million-dollar contract with her 3 extraordinary children, Naomi didn't know that across the Atlantic, Edward Lang was reading about the promising new financial analytics firm in a business magazine, not yet recognizing the founder's name as the woman he had abandoned pregnant. While celebrating her first multi-million-dollar contract with her 3 extraordinary children, Naomi didn't know that across the Atlantic, Edward Lang was reading about the promising new financial analytics firm in a business magazine, not yet recognizing the founder's name as the woman he had abandoned pregnant. 5 years passed with breathtaking speed. The triplets turned 12, transforming from curious children into remarkable pre-teens on the cusp of adolescence. Horizon Analytics had undergone an equally dramatic metamorphosis, evolving from a respected boutique firm into a financial powerhouse that commanded attention in boardrooms worldwide. Naomi stood at the floor-to-ceiling windows of Horizon's headquarters, which now occupied an entire floor in a prestigious Manhattan skyscraper. The view of the city stretched before her. The same skyline that had once seemed so indifferent to her suffering now served as the backdrop to her triumph. She wore a custom Armani suit, her once wild curls now elegantly styled, diamond studs gleaming at her ears. Nothing in her polished appearance hinted at the desperate woman who had once scrubbed floors in this very building. "The Tokyo office is online for the quarterly review, Ms. Carter," her assistant announced, interrupting her moment of reflection. Naomi nodded, moving with practiced confidence to the state-of-the-art conference room. On screens around the table, executives from London, Hong Kong, Singapore, and Tokyo waited, representing Horizon's global expansion. What had begun as a desperate gamble had transformed into an international operation with 500 employees across 5 countries. "Our predictive models have outperformed the market by 26% this quarter," Naomi began, commanding the virtual room with effortless authority. "The new neural network integration is exceeding even our ambitious projections." 2 hours later, after seamlessly directing a complex global strategy meeting, Naomi checked her watch. The triplets would be finishing their after-school activities soon. Her driver waited downstairs to take her to Elijah's mathematics symposium at Columbia University, where, at 12, he had been invited to present his paper on computational theory, under the mentorship of a prominent professor who had recognized his extraordinary gift. As the elevator descended, Naomi scrolled through her phone, smiling at a text from Maya with a video clip of her violin practice for the upcoming Vienna International Youth Competition. The haunting notes of Bach filled her earbuds, her daughters playing now so advanced that professional musicians often stopped to listen when she practiced. The third notification was from Zoe, a link to her newly launched sustainable fashion website, already generating orders for the eco-conscious designs she'd created. 26 sales on day 1, the message read, followed by a detailed revenue projection that would have impressed seasoned business analysts. The sleek company car glided through Manhattan traffic, taking Naomi to Columbia's mathematics department. As she entered the lecture hall, she spotted Elijah at the podium, his poise remarkable as he explained complex theorems to an audience of graduate students and professors. Though he had her darker coloring, something in his focused intensity occasionally reminded her of Edward, a thought she quickly banished. After the presentation, during the reception, a distinguished professor approached Naomi. "Mrs. Carter, your son's work on algorithmic efficiency is genuinely groundbreaking. We're exploring a special admission track for him. He's ready for university-level work now." "It's Ms. Carter," Naomi corrected automatically, "and thank you. Elijah's education is my highest priority." Later that evening, in their elegant Upper West Side apartment, a world away from the cramped Queen's space they'd once shared, Naomi helped Maya prepare for her competition, while Zoe conducted a business call with a sustainable fabric supplier in Peru. "Mom, look," Elijah called from his bedroom, where multiple computer screens displayed complex mathematical models. "I've been adapting your harmonic pattern recognition algorithm to predict chess moves." Naomi smiled, remembering the days when she'd coded with infants sleeping beside her laptop. "Brilliant approach. Have you considered applying a Markov chain to account for psychological variables?" As the triplets finally settled into bed, Naomi stepped onto the terrace of their apartment, gazing at the city lights. "Finally, we see Manhattan from above, not below," she whispered, echoing the promise she'd made in those dark days after their birth. Her tablet chimed with a news alert. Naomi's breath caught as she read the headline, "Lang Investments Under Investigation. Family Empire Faces Tax Evasion Charges." The accompanying photo showed Edward, now with distinguished touches of gray at his temples, looking tense as he entered a courthouse. His once boyish features had hardened, lines of stress etched around his eyes. Naomi felt nothing, not satisfaction, not vindication, not even lingering anger. Edward Lang had become irrelevant to her life, a footnote in her personal history rather than its defining chapter. The following morning, Naomi's assistant burst into her office with unusual excitement. "Ms. Carter, the FinTech Global Conference wants you as their keynote speaker. It's the most prestigious event in financial technology. Everyone who matters will be there." Naomi looked up from her computer. "When and where?" "Chicago next month. The committee was particularly impressed by your proposal on the future of artificial intelligence in financial markets." "Who else is presenting?" Naomi asked, already mentally rearranging her schedule. Rebecca hesitated slightly. "Various CEOs, including, Edward Lang of Lang Global Ventures." Naomi's fingers paused over her keyboard, the only indication that the name had registered. After the family scandal, Edward had left Lang Investments to found his own venture capital firm, considerably smaller than Horizon but still relevant in certain circles. "Interesting. It's been 15 years since I've seen him in person," Naomi remarked, her tone perfectly neutral. "Will the Triplets be attending the conference?" "Yes. Elijah is presenting his ethical algorithm project in the Young Innovators panel, Maya is performing at the opening reception, and Zoe is being recognized as Young Entrepreneur of the Year." A slight smile curved Naomi's lips. Life has a peculiar sense of justice, doesn't it? That evening, Naomi gathered the Triplets in the living room for a conversation she'd long anticipated. "There's something we need to discuss about the upcoming conference," she began carefully. "Your biological father will be there." The three 12-year-olds exchanged glances. They knew the basics of their origin story: a brief marriage that ended before their birth, a father who had chosen to leave without knowing about them. "Will we have to meet him?" Maya asked, nervousness evident in her voice. "That's entirely up to each of you," Naomi assured them. "This is your choice, not mine, and certainly not his." Elijah's expression turned analytical. "Statistically speaking, what are the chances he'll recognize the connection? We don't share his surname." "The physical resemblance is undeniable in Zoe's case," Naomi answered honestly. "But whether he makes the connection or not, I wanted you to be prepared." Zoe, ever practical, pulled up Edward's profile on her tablet. "Interesting. We have the same eye shape," she observed with scientific detachment. "I wonder what genetic traits we've inherited versus learned behaviors from you, Mom." The night before the conference, as Naomi's team finalized the last details of her presentation in their Chicago hotel, she found her children in the executive lounge, each processing the impending event differently. Elijah reviewed his presentation for the 20th time, Maya nervously ran scales on her violin, and Zoe studied competitor displays at previous conferences for display optimization strategies. "I'm nervous," Maya admitted, uncharacteristically vulnerable. "This is my first performance for such an important audience." "You three are extraordinary," Naomi responded, observing them with undisguised pride. "Tomorrow is just another day to show the world what I already know, that you are capable of anything." What Naomi didn't mention was that tomorrow, for the first time, Edward Lang would see the children he never knew, and witness the empire she had built from the ashes he had left behind. While his smartphone captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one noticed the triplets watching from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the publicly revealed truth, preparing for the final confrontation that would occur not under spotlights, but in the privacy that would forever define their relationship with the man who had abandoned them before they were even born. While his smartphone captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one noticed the triplets watching from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the publicly revealed truth. Zoe's analytical eyes narrowed. Maya's fingers nervously twisted the hem of her designer blouse, and Elijah's expression remained carefully neutral, his mind already calculating probabilities and outcomes for what would come next. The electric atmosphere in the grand ballroom of Chicago's Lakeside Hotel crackled with speculation as the evening session concluded. Journalists huddled in corners, frantically typing updates about the unexpected revelation of a past marriage between two financial powerhouses. Photographers jostled for better angles, hoping to capture the tension between Naomi Carter and Edward Lang. "We should get back to the suite," Naomi said quietly, approaching her children. "Tomorrow will be a long day." As they walked toward the elevator, Naomi felt the weight of countless stares. News traveled fast in financial circles, and the revelation of her brief marriage to Edward Lang had transformed from industry gossip to breaking news in minutes. The luxury suite on the penthouse floor offered sanctuary from the growing media storm. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcased Chicago's glittering skyline, the city lights reflecting on Lake Michigan like scattered diamonds. "Are you okay, Mom?" Maya asked, settling her violin case carefully on an antique console table. "I'm fine," Naomi assured them, slipping off her Louboutin heels. "I've anticipated this moment for 15 years. Elijah paced methodically, his movements precise. "Your revelation was strategically timed. Was that planned?" Naomi smiled at her son's perceptiveness. "Not entirely. I simply answered honestly when asked." The mathematics of reputation dynamics suggests this will increase interest in tomorrow's presentations by approximately 27%, Elijah noted, pushing his glasses up. Zoe, ever practical, had already opened her tablet. "Our social media mentions have increased 800% in the last hour. I'm tracking sentiment analysis now." Naomi watched her children with quiet pride. At 12, they processed the situation not with childish emotion but with remarkable sophistication. "Should we prepare for questions about him?" Maya asked, the only one showing visible anxiety. "Be yourselves," Naomi advised. "You don't owe explanations to anyone." Later that night, as the triplets slept in their connected suite, Naomi sat alone by the window reviewing her keynote speech. Her phone chimed with a message notification. Edward Lang. "We need to talk privately before tomorrow's sessions." She stared at the screen, 15 years of memories cascading through her mind. Her thumb hovered over the delete button before she composed a measured response. Any communication must remain strictly professional during the event. Across the hotel, in a significantly smaller suite, Edward Lang paced restlessly, phone clutched in his hand. At 47, his once boyish good looks had matured into distinguished features, though stress had carved permanent lines around his eyes. His fingers trembled slightly as he typed and deleted multiple messages to Naomi. Edward's laptop displayed numerous tabs: Horizon Analytics financial reports, Naomi Carter's executive profile, news articles about her meteoric rise. How had he missed this? How had the abandoned analyst from his family's company built an empire that now dwarfed his own venture? More disturbing were the articles about the Carter triplets, 12-year-old prodigies making names for themselves in mathematics, music, and entrepreneurship. The timing couldn't be coincidental. 15 years, 3 12-year-olds. The mathematics was undeniable. "Impossible," he whispered, but the evidence mounted with each new search. Young Elijah Carter's serious expression in a Columbia University press release. Maya Carter performing at Carnegie Hall, her posture reminiscent of his mother's. And Zoe. Edward froze at her photograph, recognizing his own eyes staring back from the screen. Sleep eluded Edward entirely. By morning, he had constructed and discarded a dozen approaches for confronting Naomi. None seemed adequate for the magnitude of the situation. The conference's second day began with a breakfast for featured speakers. Naomi entered the private dining room in a perfectly tailored cream suit, her presence commanding immediate attention. Edward, nursing his third coffee at a corner table, felt his chest tighten as she gracefully navigated the room, accepting congratulations from industry leaders who had once dismissed her. He waited until she briefly stood alone at the buffet before approaching. "Naomi." She turned, her expression professionally pleasant, betraying no hint of their shared history. "Edward, I trust you're enjoying the conference." "Cut the pleasantries," he hissed, keeping his voice low. "Those children, they're mine, aren't they?" Naomi selected a croissant with deliberate care. "This isn't the appropriate venue for personal discussions." "When, then? You've apparently kept this secret for 12 years. 15, she corrected calmly. "And it was hardly a secret. I tried to inform you." Their tense exchange was interrupted by the conference director announcing the morning's first session. Naomi moved away with practiced grace, leaving Edward frozen in place, his breakfast untouched. By midday, Edward had positioned himself strategically to observe the triplets. He watched Elijah's presentation on ethical algorithm design, stunned by the boy's intellectual sophistication, the precise gestures, the methodical thinking pattern. Edward recognized himself in the child's mannerisms, triggering an uncomfortable mixture of pride and regret. During the luncheon, he lingered near the performance area where Maya played a hauntingly beautiful violin piece. Her fingers danced across the strings with effortless precision, her expression transported by the music she created. Several executives wiped away tears at the conclusion. "Remarkable talent," commented a Swiss banker beside Edward. "The Carter girl is already receiving conservatory offers. Her mother must be extraordinary to have raised such gifted children." "Carter?" Edward repeated, the surname still jarring. "Not their father?" The banker shrugged. "Single mother success story. Built Horizon from nothing while raising triplets alone. Quite inspiring." Edward's stomach clenched. He had children, 3 brilliant, remarkable children, whose existence he had never known. Or had he? Naomi's words echoed, "I tried to inform you." The afternoon sessions passed in a blur. Edward moved through his panel discussion automatically, his thoughts consumed by glimpses of the triplets. Zoe's presentation on sustainable business ethics particularly haunted him. Her confident stance, her articulate explanations, her eyes so unmistakably like his own. By evening, Edward felt physically ill with the magnitude of his realization. He had abandoned not just Naomi, but 3 children who had grown into extraordinary young people without him. His contribution to their existence had been nothing but absence. At the evening reception, fate arranged what Edward had both dreaded and craved: direct proximity to the triplets. As he stood awkwardly by the dessert table, the 3 approached, unaware of his identity. "The chocolate mousse is superior to the tiramisu," Elijah informed his sisters clinically. "The flavor profile is more complex." "But the presentation of the tiramisu is more aesthetically pleasing," Zoe countered, her business mind already considering marketability. Maya simply selected both, her artistic temperament refusing to choose. Edward couldn't help himself. "I recommend the crème brûlée," he offered, his voice strained with suppressed emotion. 3 pairs of eyes turned to him, one analytical, one artistic, one assessingly shrewd. None showed recognition, only polite acknowledgement of a stranger's suggestion. "Thank you," Elijah replied formally. "I'm Elijah Carter. These are my sisters, Maya and Zoe." "Edward Lang," he managed, studying their faces hungrily. "Your presentations today were extraordinary." "You're the venture capital speaker," Zoe recognized immediately. "Your work with clean energy startups is impressive." Edward's chest tightened. His daughter, knew his work. "Thank you. That's kind of you to notice." An awkward silence fell until Maya spoke. "Are you attending our mother's keynote tomorrow?" "I wouldn't miss it," Edward replied, his eyes moving beyond them to where Naomi stood across the room, watching the interaction with unreadable expression. The triplets excused themselves politely, unaware of the emotional earthquake they had triggered in the stranger with the familiar eyes. Later that night, Edward finally cornered Naomi as she exited a planning meeting. The hotel corridor was momentarily empty, offering a rare moment of privacy. "They don't know who I am," he accused, voice raw with emotion. "They know they have a biological father who chose not to be part of their lives," Naomi replied evenly. "That's all that's relevant." "You should have told me." "I did tell you. Your response was a legal threat and a check to terminate any future obligation. Those were your words, Edward, not mine." He flinched, recognizing his own callous phrasing from 15 years ago. "Things are different now. I want to know them." "What you want is no longer my concern," Naomi stated, her calm demeanor more devastating than any anger could have been. "If the triplets ever express interest in knowing you, that will be their decision." As she walked away, Edward realized that her greatest revenge wasn't her financial success or public recognition. It was raising 3 exceptional human beings who had never needed him at all. While smartphones captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one perceived the triplets observing from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the publicly revealed truth, preparing for the final confrontation that would occur not under spotlights, but in the privacy that would forever define their relationship with the man who had abandoned them before they were even born. While smartphones captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one perceived the triplets observing from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the publicly revealed truth. Maya's fingers anxiously twisted her pearl bracelet. Elijah's expression remained carefully neutral, and Zoe's eyes, so like Edward's, narrowed analytically as they absorbed the implications of their mother's revelation. The morning of the conference's final day arrived with a crackling energy that permeated the grand ballroom of the Chicago Financial Center. Staff hurried to arrange seating for the unexpectedly oversold session on disruptive innovations, as news of the connection between Naomi Carter and Edward Lang had transformed routine industry proceedings into the financial world's most compelling drama. Edward arrived early, selecting a seat in the front row reserved for featured speakers. His bespoke suit, once a source of pride, felt like armor against the whispers and glances following him. He had barely slept, spending the night researching everything available about the children, his children, whose existence had been unknown to him for 12 years. The more he discovered about their accomplishments, the more profound his sense of loss became. The moderator tapped the microphone, calling the session to order. "Ladies and gentlemen, we're honored to begin with an innovative approach to risk modeling using artificial intelligence, presented by a young mathematician who's already a Fields Medal finalist nominee despite his age. Please welcome, directly from Harvard's Advanced Mathematics program, Elijah Carter." Edward sat straighter, his heart racing as the serious young man he'd briefly met yesterday approached the podium. Something in the boy's measured gait seemed achingly familiar, the same careful precision Edward's father had drilled into him as a child. Elijah adjusted his glasses with a gesture Edward had seen countless times in his own reflection. "My algorithm incorporates ethical constraints that traditional financial models ignore," Elijah began, his articulation flawless despite his youth. "By quantifying social impact alongside profit metrics, we create sustainable prediction models that outperform conventional approaches by 23%. As the presentation continued, Edward found himself leaning forward, captivated not just by the brilliance of the concepts, but by the genetic echoes of himself he could now clearly recognize. The hand gestures, the methodical thought process, the precise vocabulary. This extraordinary child carried his DNA, yet had been shaped entirely without his influence. The audience erupted in applause when Elijah concluded. Several venture capitalists immediately surrounded the boy, exchanging cards and enthusiastic handshakes. Edward remained frozen in his seat, overwhelmed by pride for a son he had no right to claim. During the midday reception, Edward navigated through clusters of financial elites, his attention continually drawn to the haunting violin music filling the atrium. On a small elevated platform, a young girl performed with such emotional depth that conversations hushed around her. Her eyes closed in concentration. Maya Carter's bow moved across strings with preternatural skill, drawing forth notes that seemed impossibly mature from one so young. "Remarkable, isn't she?" commented a Swiss banker beside Edward. "Maya Carter, prodigy, won the international Yehudi Menuhin competition last year." Carter, Edward repeated, the surname still jarring. Another Carter. Yes, one of the triplets, the banker continued, oblivious to Edward's growing discomfort. Extraordinary family. The mother built Horizon Analytics from nothing while raising them alone. Quite the inspiration. Edward's chest tightened as the pieces aligned with devastating clarity. Triplets. 12 years old. Carter. The mathematics was inescapable, the timeline perfectly aligned with his abandonment of Naomi. As Maya's performance concluded to enthusiastic applause, Edward scanned the room, finally spotting Naomi near the bar. Unlike yesterday's careful avoidance, today she stood confidently at the center of an admiring circle, CEOs and investment bankers gravitating toward her as if she controlled her own orbital force. Her tailored Dior suit conveyed effortless authority, her posture relaxed, yet commanding. Nothing in her poise suggested the desperate woman he had cast aside 15 years ago. Their eyes met across the crowded room. Recognition flashed between them, 15 years insufficient to erase the memory of what they had once been to each other. Edward searched her expression for anger, resentment, triumph, any emotion that might offer him absolution or punishment. Instead, he found something far more devastating: complete professional indifference, as if he were merely another conference attendee of moderate significance. While still processing this encounter, Edward's attention was pulled to the awards ceremony beginning in the adjacent hall. The announcer's voice echoed through speakers. For our Young Innovator of the Year award, please welcome Zoe Carter, founder of EcoStyle, revolutionizing sustainable fashion at just 12 years old. Edward moved toward the ceremony as if pulled by gravity, arriving just as Zoe took the stage. The moment he saw her clearly under the spotlights, his breath caught painfully. The same intense blue eyes he saw in his mirror every morning gazed out at the audience. The same distinctive jawline, the same half-smile that his mother had always claimed was the Lang family trademark. "It's not possible," he whispered, though the evidence stood before him, accepting an award with gracious confidence. "Impressive family, aren't they?" remarked an investor beside him. The mother, Naomi Carter, built Horizon Analytics from scratch while raising triplets alone, an inspiring story. Edward felt the floor tilting beneath his feet. Triplets, 15 years. Carter. The words escaped as a strangled whisper. "Yes, quite extraordinary children," the investor continued, misinterpreting Edward's shock. "The boy's already publishing mathematical theories. The girl with the violin has performed at Carnegie Hall, and this one," he nodded toward Zoe, "has fashion retailers fighting for her sustainable designs. Genetic lottery winners, I'd say." Edward barely heard him, his mind racing through calculations. 15 years ago, the night he had abandoned Naomi at the Plaza Hotel, the annulment papers, the check to terminate any future obligation. Had she been pregnant then? Had she tried to tell him? The memory of her voice called after him as he stormed out. "Edward, please, I have something to tell you." By the formal dinner that evening, Edward felt physically ill with the weight of his realization. Fate or the conference organizers' cruel humor had placed him at the same VIP table as Naomi and the triplets, with just 3 seats separating him from the family he never knew existed. He watched, simultaneously fascinated and devastated, as the 3 adolescents interacted with their mother, leaning in to whisper jokes, laughing at shared memories, displaying the easy intimacy of a close-knit family that had never needed his presence. "Your speech tomorrow is finalized, Mom?" Elijah asked, adjusting his glasses. "I incorporated those market projections we discussed." "Perfectly ready," Naomi responded, her expression softening when addressing her children in a way it never did for anyone else. "Oh, I should introduce everyone. This is Edward Lang, from Lang Global Ventures." The casual way she introduced him, without acknowledgement of their past, was the first dagger. Her tone suggested he was merely another industry colleague, not the man who had fathered her children. "Your children are extraordinary," Edward managed, his voice strangled. "Thank you," Naomi replied with a polite smile. "They are my greatest achievement." "I'm a fan of your work in clean energy venture funding," Zoe commented politely, having no idea she was addressing her biological father. "Especially your approach to scalable solar technology." Thank you," Edward responded, studying her face, now clearly seeing his own reflection in her features. As the dinner progressed, Edward found himself increasingly desperate to establish some connection with these children who carried his blood yet were complete strangers. He mentioned Harvard, where Elijah had been accepted early. He referenced Vienna, where Maya would perform next month. He commented on sustainable textiles, watching Zoe's eyes light up with the same passion he once felt for new financial models. When the meal finally ended, Edward gathered his courage and approached Naomi as she momentarily stood alone, checking messages on her phone. "Naomi, we need to talk." "About business?" "Certainly. My team can schedule a meeting." "Number about—" "They're mine, aren't they?" he whispered, his voice unsteady. Naomi studied him with disturbing calm. "Biologically? Yes. In any other relevant aspect?" "Number, why didn't you ever tell me?" "I told your secretary when I tried to reach you." "I received legal threats in response," she answered, maintaining a professional tone. "You made your choice, Edward. I made mine." "I have rights?" "Actually, you don't," Naomi interrupted, finally allowing a spark of emotion to escape. "You relinquished any rights when you signed those annulment papers declaring our marriage never existed, when your lawyer sent that check to terminate any future obligation. Your words, not mine." Their conversation was interrupted as the conference CEO announced the final panel for tomorrow, where both would participate. As applause filled the room, Edward realized the magnitude of what he had lost, not just a family, but a financial legacy that made his own company seem insignificant by comparison. While the smartphones captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one noticed the triplets watching from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the truth finally revealed, preparing for the final confrontation that would occur not under spotlights, but in the privacy that would forever define their relationship with the man who had abandoned them before they were even born. While the smartphones captured the moment and hashtags exploded across social media, no one noticed the triplets watching from the entrance of the hall, their faces processing the truth finally revealed. The revelation of their mother's connection to Edward Lang had transformed from private family matter to public spectacle in the space of a single question. By morning, the digital ecosystem had erupted with speculation. Naomi's phone buzzed continuously with notifications as headlines multiplied across financial news sites. Revealed, the hidden past between two financial titans and prodigy. Triplets, the heirs Lang never knew. In her suite, Naomi silenced her phone and turned to her children, who sat in various states of contemplation around the elegant sitting area. The moment she had prepared for over 12 years had arrived. "I think it's time we discuss everything," she said quietly. "The complete truth about your father." Maya clutched a decorative pillow to her chest. "Did he really not know about us?" Naomi took a deep breath. "I tried to tell him the night he left. He didn't give me the chance. When I discovered I was carrying you three, I called his office repeatedly. His secretary eventually told me that any further contact would result in legal action for harassment." "Charming," Zoe remarked dryly, though her usual confidence appeared slightly shaken. Elijah remained silent, processing the information with methodical precision. "The timing of your revelation was statistically significant. You could have continued avoiding the connection indefinitely." "I never planned to lie if directly asked," Naomi explained. "I've never been ashamed of our story. I just protected you from unnecessary complications." "What happens now?" Maya asked, her violinist's fingers nervously tracing patterns on the pillow's fabric. "That depends partly on you," Naomi said carefully. "Edward will undoubtedly attempt to establish contact. You're old enough to decide whether you want that." Elijah adjusted his glasses. His abandonment shows a fundamental character flaw in decision-making under pressure. That trait tends to be persistent across lifetime behavioral patterns. "He's been sending messages all morning," Zoe reported, scrolling through her tablet. Email, social media requests, even a formal letter delivered to the concierge requesting a family meeting. "He seems desperate," Maya observed. "Desperation doesn't equal sincerity," Naomi replied gently. "People often want most what they suddenly discover they can't have." As predicted, Edward's attempts at contact grew increasingly frantic throughout the day. He sent bouquets of flowers to their suite with handwritten notes. He approached Naomi's team members with personal messages. He even attempted to reschedule the closing panel discussion to allow for urgent, private matters. Naomi maintained professional distance, focusing on preparing the triplets for their final day at the conference. She helped Maya select her performance piece for the closing ceremony, reviewed Elijah's notes for the Young Innovators Roundtable, and offered suggestions for Zoe's acceptance speech for her entrepreneurship award. That afternoon, as Naomi reviewed her keynote address, her phone displayed Edward's 20th message of the day. "Please, Naomi, 5 minutes. I deserve to know my children." The word deserve ignited something in her that 15 years of distance had nearly extinguished. She typed a single response. "You deserved nothing. They deserve everything. That's the difference between us." The closing sessions proceeded with an undercurrent of electric tension. Audience members divided attention between presentations and surreptitious glances between the estranged parents. Journalists positioned themselves strategically, hoping to capture any interaction between Naomi and Edward. After the final panel, Edward intercepted Naomi as she exited the stage. His eyes held a desperation she had never seen, even during their brief marriage. "I'm willing to do anything," he pleaded, lowering his voice as attendees passed by. "A company merger, public acknowledgement, whatever you want. Just let me know them." Naomi studied him, searching for the young man she had once loved in this older, anxious face. She found no trace of him. "This isn't a negotiation, Edward," she replied, her voice neither angry nor triumphant but resolved. "I'm not looking for compensation or revenge. The triplets are nearly teenagers. If they want to know you, that will be their decision, not mine. But don't expect them to fill the emptiness in your life." "I've lost everything," he murmured. "No," Naomi corrected him. "You chose to give up everything. There's a fundamental difference." That evening, in the privacy of their suite, Naomi facilitated the conversation she had both dreaded and prepared for since the triplets were old enough to ask about their father. "I've never made decisions based on hatred," she explained to her children. "I built Horizon and raised you based on love and determination. Whatever choice you make about Edward should come from your own hearts, not obligation or curiosity alone." Elijah spoke first, his analytical mind having reached a conclusion. "I have no interest in establishing a relationship with someone who demonstrated such profound failure in risk assessment and ethical decision-making." Maya nodded in agreement. "I don't need additional complications before Vienna. Perhaps someday, but not now." Zoe, however, tilted her head thoughtfully. "I'd like to meet him once, supervised. From a business perspective, understanding all genetic inputs to my decision-making processes could be valuable." Naomi suppressed a smile at her daughter's practical framing. "I'll arrange it if that's what you want." 6 months later, Fortune magazine published a cover profile of Naomi and the triplets, highlighting Horizon Analytics' ascension to become the world's most valuable data analysis company. A small note at the end mentioned that Edward Lang had sold Lang Global Ventures to an Asian conglomerate and relocated to Europe. True to her word, Naomi had arranged a supervised lunch between Zoe and Edward before his departure. The meeting occurred in a private dining room of a Manhattan restaurant, with Naomi present but seated at a respectful distance. "I appreciate your willingness to meet," Edward had begun awkwardly. Zoe, startlingly composed, had nodded. "I approached this meeting as a data-gathering exercise. We share genetic material which creates certain biological connections, but relationship formation requires consistent investment over time. I'd like to make that investment now, Edward had offered eagerly. That option expired approximately 12 years ago, Zoe had replied, not unkindly but with clinical precision. I can consider you a distant acquaintance, Mr. Lang, nothing more. Edward had seemed crushed by her assessment, though he managed a weak smile. You remind me of my mother. Straightforward, no pretense. According to Mom, I remind everyone of you, Zoe had countered. I've decided to take that as a compliment regarding analytical abilities rather than emotional intelligence. In her new office overlooking Central Park, ironically in the building that once belonged to the Lang family, Naomi examined the photograph of the triplets at their early high school graduation. Elijah would begin his studies at MIT next month, having completed high school requirements 3 years early. Maya had deferred conservatory acceptance to tour internationally with a renowned chamber orchestra. Zoe had secured venture capital funding for expanding her sustainable fashion enterprise. Naomi briefly thought about Edward, not with satisfaction or bitterness, but with clear understanding. The true victory wasn't building an empire larger than his or watching him lose his, but creating a life where his absence left no void. When the phone rang with another billion-dollar acquisition offer, Naomi Carter smiled and moved forward as she always had. While signing the contract for Horizon Analytics' global expansion in her office in the former Lang Tower, Naomi finally understood that her greatest victory wasn't building a financial empire that overshadowed Edward's, but creating 3 extraordinary human beings who never needed validation from someone who hadn't valued them from the beginning. And this was a form of success no algorithm could calculate. If you enjoyed today's video, I'm sure you'll love the next one. Don't waste time. Just click on the screen.